Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, presented by Wendy's. We are deep into the offseason now, Ari. We're like 3 days in, but we got a big guest coming. Big guest. Illinois head coach Bret Bielema joins us.
What does offseason mean?
I know. It is a very strange concept, but there is no offseason in college football.
Dude, great guest today. Super excited about it. We're going to try into the offseason, and I'm sure we will be successful in bringing interesting guests to the show. And that's a really good way to start off the offseason.
Yes, Bret Bielema I always found him to be one of the more interesting college football coaches because he says what's on his mind and does what's on his mind. If you watch the bowl game, you nearly had a fight between him and Shane Beamer during the game. So he talks about that a little bit in the interview. But yeah, we are going to be loading up with guests. Next week will be the Senior Bowl. We'll be talking to guys who just finished their college careers, kind of getting the exit interviews with the guys who are leaving. And I'm interested to see, what light gets shined on last season and what happens as people are looking forward to the next season. We're going to talk a lot with Bret about what next season is going to look like. And obviously they're very excited about what they have coming back. Ari, later in the show, we're going to go over some week one line. We have week one lines.
Pick show. It's a pick show.
It's incredible. I was like, because, we just released our way too early top 25. And I'm like, that's fine. We're just, everyone understands we're guessing that this is for fun. Like, you can actually spend your money on these lines where you don't even know what the roster's going to look like.
There's one look ahead line that caught me by surprise. And I saw
Save it.
No, it's not even in the ones that we're talking today. Oh, okay, one of those are there. I thought we were talking about week one today. There's one at the end.
No, we'll talk about the one at the very end as well. There's one game that in November there's already a line for, and I'm sure you have a pretty good guess what that is. And but when I say we don't even know what rosters, we don't know what coaching staffs are going to look like. For example, Al Golden, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, is now the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. So Notre Dame's got to hire a new DC. Now, we think it might be Mike Mickens, who's already on their staff, which would probably allow for some pretty easy continuity. But Marcus Freeman has got to figure that part out. And I don't know that this is done because only a couple of the NFL jobs have been filled so far. So there's still a chance that you're going to see some more movement. I mean, I remember last year, Ari, at Senior Bowl week, the news was Jeff Hafley leaving to become the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, and all of a sudden Boston College needed a coach. Bill O'Brien, who had been hired at Ohio State to be the OC, goes and becomes the head coach. Then Chip Kelly gets hired to be the OC at Ohio State. So there's a lot of dominoes that still could fall.
You ever wonder about those dominoes had that not happened and Chip Kelly wasn't Ohio State's offensive coordinator, if one move like that changes the outcome of a season?
Well, yeah, that's a good question because, we've seen Bill O'Brien have success as a coordinator in college football. He was obviously pretty successful as Alabama's offensive coordinator and helped Bryce Young win a Heisman Trophy. But would Bill O'Brien in that role, would it have worked as well as Chip Kelly in that role, or would it work the same or better as Chip Kelly in that role?
Yeah, what if Bill O'Brien took the job, stayed with the job, they beat Michigan, but then didn't win the national title? There's alternate histories there,
Yes.
How things would have gone. And, I'm kind of a person that likes to think about the what ifs, and some of the most fun stories I've written in my career, Andy, are going down the path that didn't get traveled and trying to figure out what that path would have looked like. I remember one of the most read stories I wrote at The Athletic was the Adrian Martinez butterfly effect. I don't know if you remember how many branches kind of went off of that one, but that was a pretty crazy situation too. And it's what if Adrian Martinez would have played at Ohio State and all the different pathways that would have come from that. So this is
one of my favorite things I ever wrote was at Sports Illustrated. I believe it was in 2010 or 2011. It was, what if Chris Leak had gained one more yard on a scramble in the 2004 Florida LSU game and what would have happened to college football, because it would have kept Ron Zook's job at Florida. Urban Meyer would have gone to Notre Dame, and all of the butterfly effect from there. It was crazy.
Bigger one than Adrian Martinez. Yeah. Could you imagine, like, if because I truly believe that in that era, if Urban Meyer would have gone to Penn State, because you know all those rumors about him like looking for houses.
He was going to Penn State to replace Paterno before the Ohio State job opened. Like that was real.
But that Notre Dame one you just mentioned, like I think that no matter where he would have gone, they would be much different today. Like I don't know how Ohio State fans look back at Urban Meyer and some of the way that it ended, but like Ohio State is what it is right now because he existed there, and I feel like he would have done that because at the time his way of coaching was king. Get the best players,
and if he takes
rule by fear, all that.
If he takes the Notre Dame job instead of the Florida job, I don't know that he would have had as quick a success at Notre Dame as he did at Florida. Because remember, he wins the national title in year 2 at Florida. And then Nick Saban shows up at Alabama, and that was kind of what helped burn him out at Florida. I don't know that he burns out as quickly at Notre Dame, and maybe he's not available because maybe he's Notre Dame's coach when the Ohio State job opens. And then what happens? Like, it would have been incredible. It would have been crazy.
Yeah, right. Ohio State wouldn't exist, and maybe Notre Dame would have 2 national titles right now. You never know. But it would have been really interesting to see him operate there. I don't know if Notre Dame's culture would have been ideal,
especially
for his
back
coaching
then.
style.
Especially back then. Notre Dame now, the way they work with Marcus Freeman. Now, I don't know that players now and Urban Meyer would get along very well, because you saw what happened when he went to the NFL, and I would argue that players now are much more similar to NFL players in the way you have to deal
Urban
with
wouldn't
them.
even know like freshmen and sophomores' names on his own team until they were like pretty good. Like it was kind of one of those deals of like, if you want Urban to know who you are, or you want him to care about you, you have to produce. And like some people thrive in that environment and some people don't. But it definitely worked. So, it is a really interesting thought of where coaches could have gone and what they could have done. Maybe we can dive deeper into that. We can do a whole episode in the summer of like that coming
what
true.
If? Can we do a what if?
Yeah.
Nick Terry's got a great one in the chat. What if Ohio State makes the kick against Georgia? We're talking about 2 national titles for Ryan Day this week. Probably true.
I mean, you could. What if they make the kick against Georgia and Kyle McCord gets an extra second and a half to throw in last year's game? I mean, they could have 3. It's if you could play the Ohio State what if national championship game, and they could have like 9 national titles going back, because they're the only team in college football that's been either in the playoff or on the cusp of the playoff every single year since the beginning it started. Like, there's never been a year that they went into the final day and you were 100% sure that they weren't going to make it, or if they weren't like 5. So they've been pretty consistent, but like I just like love the idea, not so much of like games and titles, but more of like how the sport would be different if a coach went somewhere else. Like that to me is really cool.
Yeah. One that did happen was Bret Bielema went to Wisconsin to be Barry Alvarez's defensive coordinator, and then wound up taking over the job. And it turned out he was the perfect person for that job. He tried to go to the SEC. He's back in the Big Ten now at Illinois. His career has some interesting what ifs, but we're going to talk to him about what is next at Illinois, because they had a really good team and they weren't sure what they were going to get back. They're getting a lot back. So we're going to talk to Bret Bielema next. But first, I want to tell you about Axia Time. We saw the folks from Axia Time actually collecting confetti on the field after the national title game, because Axia Time is the official timepiece of the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy. So you're looking at Ohio State's watches that commemorate their trip to the playoff, But now they've got championship commemorative watches that are coming out. Go to axiatime.com. You can look those right now. They're beautiful. They've got a couple different designs. They're gorgeous. And these are Swiss made, automatic. I'm wearing my Odysseus 2 right now. I love this watch so much. And you can get those to commemorate Ohio State's national title. If you're a fan of a team that made the college football playoff this year, they've got gorgeous watches that commemorate your team's trip to the CFP. Axiatime.com. For those CFP watches, code ARI ampersand Andy gets you 10% off. The Ohio State national title watches will include bits of confetti from the game. And again, we saw them collecting the confetti. So it's real. Axiatime.com. Check them out now. And, you'll know what time it is. Now it is time to talk to Bret Bielema, whose team is one of the most exciting. I think they're going to be one of the trendy picks. We've already announced that we're going to make them a trendy pick to be really good next year. But I think we're not going to be alone in this because they got a bunch coming back. Here's Bret Bielema explaining how that happened.
We are joined by the great Bret Bielema, head coach of the Illinois Fighting Illini, who had some criticism of our way too early top 10 because we left his team off. Asked if we were still feeling New Year's Eve. Well, Bret, our way too early top 25 has come out. Now, in our defense, we did not know about all those guys that were coming back. They had not made their decisions yet. So now that we know about Gabe Jacobs and Luke Altmaier had already made his decision, but about that group that's coming back, we got you at number 7. We feel better about that?
I do feel better about that, but I was just trying to give information. I wasn't criticizing. And honestly, it's kind of interesting. We had one of our local writers write a story on portal rankings and all this stuff, and I found it interesting. One of the things that we've been able to do is retain our best players. Andy, I think you hit a great point. So, Luke Altmaier was coming back, and obviously a very talented player in his own right, but we didn't know about Gabe Backus. We didn't know about Xavier Scott. And then the real trip really was our left tackle, J.C. Davis, who we took really as a one-year wonder. We knew he was a guy that only had 1 year of eligibility. And then when this new JUCO rule came through to give everybody a bonus year, I flew out the night before Christmas and met with him and his family and got him to agree to come back. So that's our 5 top players all decided to come back. And I don't think a lot of people in college football have that. And I think that was a big key factor. Plus 18 of 22 came back on our current roster, which was big.
And that, so thank you, Diego Pavia. But yeah, that was kind of the one that put it over the top for me was you're getting your left tackle back when you didn't think you would. And, what does it mean to know that you've got that spot secured?
It was interesting. So I came to work 2 springs ago and I had this email from the NFLPA and I basically was invited to be a part of Joe Thomas's induction to the Hall of Fame, the announcement and all that goes into it. And at that point, it really made a big moment on me, just like he was my first player ever drafted in the first round. Joe Thomas was a left tackle, got the 4th pick to the Cleveland Browns, won the Outland Trophy. His backup, Gabe Karimi, then started 4 years for me at left tackle, won the Outland Trophy, got drafted first round to Chicago Bears, and we're able to just kind of put together a string of left tackles when I was at Wisconsin. Then, it came full circle when I went to Arkansas and, recruited and developed a young man by the name of Frank Ragnow, who's a starting center for the Detroit Lions, is the highest paid center in NFL history. So it's really put a premium on those offensive line. Next year, we have all 5 offensive linemen returning for us on a 10-win football team. That probably is number one reason I get excited, who protects a really good quarterback.
I might have missed the moment here, Bret, because Andy did all the talking at the beginning.
Sorry.
But you did wonder if the after effects of New Year's Eve were still hitting us on January 5th. I was just wondering, you ever had any benders that lasted 5 days later or what?
I wouldn't say 5, but I was trying to find a creative way to be in the New Year's spirit. I didn't figure you guys did
I've been in it multiple days before, so it's not that far fetched.
I mean, it could have been a crazy New Year's, but all kidding aside, Bret, when you look at the way that this sport is now set up, and the fact that teams that people may just dismiss based on logos have made better runs. When you look at the roster that you bring back, and that it was already very competitive or very good in the Big Ten. Where was this in your mind in terms of where you would be in your Illinois build? And are you kind of ahead of schedule in your own head?
what was fun for me over the last 4 years of being here is just take all the experiences I had at Wisconsin, all the experiences at Arkansas. Spent 2 years in the league with the Patriots and Giants, and I've blown a lot of things that have blended into where we are today. College football has never mirrored NFL football as much as it does right now. We have a 74-man travel roster. The NFL has a 53-man NFL roster that actually becomes, I believe 47 on game day. So there's a lot of things that have, accustomed to that, but also just the salary numbers now, right? So 2 years ago, I was at 2 million. Last year, we went to 5 million. We finished 5th in the Big Ten. I know the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten were north of 20 million. So to get in the spot where that now we're all going to be a little bit more equal, somewhere in that 15 million range, I think everybody's going to become accustomed to. And for me in my career, for the first time in college football, it's kind of fun to be on the same playing field or feel that you have a chance to be there. There's still some things are in play. Some people are getting some crazy NIL deals here the first 6 months of the year that have kind of created a little imbalance. But I think college football is, and that's why I think you're going to see a lot of college coaches going to the NFL. You're going to see NFL coaches come to college, as we're already starting to see. It's unprecedented what can happen on a roster right now. I just met this morning at 8 o'clock with my incoming players, the 24 new guys in the building, 12 transfers, 12 high school guys, and to have those guys currently built into our current roster. And we may have a couple more come and go, this spring, but I think for the most part, we're building our roster next year, and it's a really exciting time.
Well, and this is one, I think people assume that every roster is just going to wholesale change out, but you just talked about how many returning starters you have, how many guys you retain. Now, you are bringing in people in key spots like Hudson Clement from West Virginia. He was their leading receiver. He's coming in. That's a spot you guys needed to, because you had older receivers who were leaving. But it feels like that's how you're going to build. And you've got your window, just like in the NFL. The NFL, it's when you have the quarterback on the rookie contract. I guess now it's when you have that older left tackle, when you have an older quarterback.
Andy, you're spot on. And then what people don't realize is I still say that we are a development type program. I believe in that. I love it. Right. So in our bowl game, you saw guys like Malik Elzy, Kapka Jones, Hank Beatty made a ridiculous catch. Those 3 receivers in conjunction with Clement, who we got coming in. Right. And then we added another J-Bo is another transfer wide receiver. So it's the guys we've retained and developed and built, had some more experienced players coming in. And then I think the part that everybody's missing out on is all the auxiliary pieces. I think that's why I'm so grateful for my NFL times is, now how important that punter, the kicker, the long snapper, the backup quarterback, your depth in the running back.
Oh, you got a punter. Room. That's right. You got a punter.
From Australia. Stole him from Purdue, right? Like I know how important it was for us to have that. We had a guy that had been there but hadn't been really consistent as they wanted. David Alano, our returning field goal kicker, is the best in my opinion, one of the best in the country. Ethan Wachowski, Chowman, is our kickoff guy. Our backup quarterback. We took the quarterback from Northern Illinois who beat Notre Dame, who's playing tonight in a national championship game. So it's I think the acquisition of some assets around your current roster that you've built, and then I'm telling you, we retained our 5 best players, and that does not happen very often, especially guys had different options, right? We had teams contact our guys who were willing to pay our guys double the money to go to other places, and they just turned it down. They know what we're building here and what they can be valued at the end. And that's the part that I think is a fun and exciting time for our players.
That's pretty interesting. I always like this part of the year too, when you start hearing everything, and now you're talking me into number 3.
We're just going to be where we're at.
Well, the question
go ahead.
I was going to ask him, Andy, though, is that so I think the number one comparison that you're going to get, whether you like it or not, throughout the offseason is this next year's Indiana.
Right.
The team that, people just didn't see coming because they're not paying attention. And then the next thing you know, they're 10-0 and in the middle of the thing. And I'm wondering, Bret, from your standpoint in coaching and how you've been around the block and have had very successful teams in the past, do you want people to come in to the year expecting Illinois to be really, really good? Or would you rather kind of arrive out of the blue and have under the radar games that people aren't hyping up, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're 7-0?
I think the toughest opponent on our schedule next year is the University of Illinois. I think how we handle things of the past and prepare ourselves for the future has got to be the things we're most safeguarded against. We got 12 teams all of them can be teams that we can win, and all of them can be teams that we can lose to. But I think the key is to have an understanding of who you are, where you are, and what you're understanding or what you're planning to do. I always say here at Illinois, we need a chip not only on one shoulder but on both shoulders. I don't want to be next year's Indiana, but I don't want to be last year's Oregon or whatever you want to say, right? Like, I think we are who we are. We just got to embody that on an everyday basis and really just plan to it, build to it, develop to it. I couldn't be more excited about a group of coaches and players, right? Everybody just concentrates on the players. I think I have a group of coaches returning that have impressed me beyond belief. I have a offensive coordinator, Barry Lunny, who has been here now going into his fourth season, an incredibly talented coach who's surrounded himself with offensive coaches who are very talented. I have 20 coaches in the building, one of them being Aaron Henry, my defense coordinator. 20 coaches, 9 of those 20 have played for me, right? And so they know and understand what the expectation is and the standards. They've been with me both at Arkansas, Wisconsin, here at Illinois, and now I've actually got a guy that was with me at the Giants and at the Patriots. So to have those guys that have my understanding of where we are and what we're doing. But the big thing is to be in a partnership with our athletic director, Josh Whitman, who played here, played in the NFL for 5 years, knows what we're doing. He's built this thing from scratch with us, and it's just a really fun time here at the University of Illinois to be a part of it.
Makes a huge difference to have an AD who loves football, for sure. But I don't think you're going to sneak up on anybody, Bret, and I'll tell you why. That bowl game was you guys coming off a great season, and now we know that you guys have all these guys coming back. South Carolina coming off a season where they were surprisingly good and have a lot of exciting young players coming back. How intense was that game? And we all saw you and Shane get after it, but how intense was that for a bowl game that, most people probably thought, oh, it's not in the playoff. They're not taking it that seriously. That's about as serious as I saw anybody take a bowl game this year.
Well, I knew it from the opening jump. Anytime you got Big Ten, SEC, just kind of who they are, who we are, it's always going to be that way. I was one of the guys who's been able to see it from both sidelines. Obviously, very successful at Wisconsin, went to Arkansas, went to 3 bowl games in 5 years, knew what that conference was available to do. Obviously, the Big Ten had a lot of success this year in the bowl games against them, both in the playoffs and outside of it. So there's going to be those built-in things. Have tremendous respect for Shane. I thought coming out of it, I agree with a lot of people, to win their last 6 ball games, they were the hottest team coming out of the SEC at the end of the year, and we're on the verge of getting into playoffs. So I knew it, and then I heard what they were saying, the emphasis they were putting on this bowl game. So as the game escalated, it got a little bit hotter and hotter because it was a tight ball game. So huge respect. I had a conversation with Shane last week about just kind of where everything is and reflecting on the past. And, was sorry, I didn't mean anything directed at him, but it was also, I think, 2 really good competitive teams that were in the heat of the moment. And a lot of people said going into that game outside of the playoffs, that was the most contested bowl game. And it certainly played out that way, but super excited. Next year we open up with Western. We have a second game against Duke, who obviously just acquired a quarterback that is very talented, and to see what Manny can do. And that I have tremendous respect for Manny and what he's been able to do in his career. And then have, 2 back-to-back home games. I think one Purdue's in between there, but have 2 home games against USC and Ohio State that are really, really significant. So, yeah, it's a fun game, fun schedule. We got 12 guaranteed games, 7 on the front end, 2 weeks, got a bye, got 2 weeks and a bye, and then 3, and then hopefully put ourselves in some postseason play, which is the whole goal of our program.
Hey, Bret, I don't want to relitigate the whole Shane Beamer thing with you. I'm sure that's why
we actually bet it would take a few months, but you did it in like a week and a half. Yeah. So that's good. You already hashed it out.
The thing that I've been curious about with you is, a few years ago when Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh left our sport, there seemed to be like a void at times of like big time personalities. And anybody who's followed your career all the way back to Wisconsin has known that you have ruffled some feathers from time to time, but you're also unapologetically yourself and one of the bigger personalities in the sport. Have you thought about, what that could mean for Illinois if you were to step in and become one of those personalities who, I'm not saying getting into spats with people, but just like, just being yourself and making headlines, is that good for Illinois? And do you find an emphasis on like, hey, the more you can be you, the better?
I tell our kids every day, there's 3 things every day when you wake up you should do, right? Try to do things the right way, be respectful of everyone, and be the best you. And I tell them, hey, for me, I only know how to be Bret Bielema. I have a brother named Barry and a brother named Bart. I can't be either one of them. I can be me, right? I don't try to be somebody else. I try to be the person I am. when that moment came up during the game, I didn't walk over that intention. I walked over there and did something that crossed my mind when I walked over there, right? There wasn't any pre-planning or any unintended circumstances headed over there. Just trying to be me. I don't know how to be anybody else but me. I think that's why when my wife married me, I'm the only me, right? And these kids, I think sometimes give up opportunities to go other places, maybe with, the idea that you could maybe get a little bit more bank in the bank account, but like they understand what we've done. I was watching a playoff game the other night, Detroit, obviously playing. Who the hell are we playing?
Washington, yeah.
And I was watching, one of my favorite players of all time, Frank Ragnow, playing against one of my other favorite players of all time, Johnny Newton, on a touchdown run where they used a technique, both of them, that we had talked about and taught, right? And to see like 6 or 7 of my former players competing not only against each other offensively, defensively, but literally against each other on a reach block, it's absolutely the most captivating, greatest feeling in the world, right? Now, I felt for Frank Ragnow, Dan Skipper, and Kevin Zeitler, 3 offensive linemen that I coached that were playing against Washington, blocking Johnny. But I saw Quan Martin return a touchdown. I'm watching Quan return a touchdown interception, and I'm saying to myself, I wonder if Johnny's going to find a quarterback, because we always teach him to find a quarterback because they're the last level of defense to stop a touchdown. And sure enough, Johnny is pushing him with his right now. The other guy came over and clobber knocked him, but it was just, it was awesome to see that moment show up in that high level. You're talking NFL playoffs, right? I mean, the highest level of college or of NFL playoff scheduling, and 2 steps away from the Super Bowl. So it's tough for me. I turned 55 a week ago Monday, and I know in my career I'm the best I've ever been, right? And the part that I've really enjoyed is I think now we got a roster coming back that is all junior and senior labeled heavy, and some kids that have an understanding. But again, they're going to have to understand our biggest opponent is going to be ourselves, right? And we got to be able to understand what that means.
I am glad you just brought up Frank Ragnow, because he ties into a story about you and me that I don't think you know yet. So I've been 25 years. You are the only coach who has ever gotten me subpoenaed. I'm sitting at home one day, knock on the door. I open the door. There's a rolled up piece of paper in my door handle. And I pull it open, and it is a subpoena from the University of Arkansas's attorneys. It was that you guys were fighting it out over your buyout. And so I'm not going to make you say anything about it, because I'm sure you had to sign something that said you won't. But I'll tell you what happened. They asked, I had written a story about you when I was at Sports Illustrated. You and I had talked at Oklahoma's Pro Day. You were with the Patriots. Yeah. It was Baker Mayfield, Orlando Brown. And we had talked probably for like 20 minutes about how great Frank Ragnow is. And so they want all these, they're like, we want your notes. We want your, transcript of the interview. And I'm like, you can have the quote they used, and everything else is none of your damn business. But if you'd like to know how good Bret Bielema thinks Frank Ragnow is, I can tell you that, because I know a lot about it right now. So that was, but I'll tell you, Bret, I was in Arkansas. I think it was a week after Frank's dad died. And I watched how you and your staff handled that situation. And I always thought, if it were my kid and that happened to me, they'd be in good hands with you guys.
Yeah, he was a special young man that has done special things. I think it's just the beginning. And there's a whole other backstory to that too. Like, Frank, when his father passed, was, not in a good place, but he played right away. We actually played Alabama the next week, and Nick Saban, bless his heart, was unbelievable to Frank after the game. But he didn't really address some feelings and issues until he was drafted in the NFL. So there was a whole time there that, I didn't know if Frank was going to be able to pull it off. And obviously not only has he pulled it off, he's pulled it off to a high level. And he plays right next to Kevin Zeitler, who was a guy I coached, both first-round draft picks. And then Dan Skipper, the guy who catches all the touchdown passes. He was a undrafted free agent. Honest to goodness, I was at the New England Patriots. I'd watched a couple tackles come in that were just awful. And I didn't want to be the coach that was praising his older players. So I went into coach's office, Coach Belichick. I said, hey, I'm just telling you, there's a guy, Dan Skipper, sitting on his couch in Dallas, Texas right now that got cut in the preseason, who can block way better than these cats we keep bringing in and keep cutting. And so Bill watched his film, brought him in. He not only signed him, he stayed with us through the Super Bowl. And now that was in 2018. We're now in 2025, and he's been playing in the NFL ever since. If I hadn't brought him in at that point and brought him to Bill's attention, he probably would have never played the last 7 years in the NFL. So that's the fun part for me. Like, I've done well in life. I got, some great moments. My daughters, enjoy a great life with my wife, and we do some really good things. But to see now the players get to these things and see players that, to see Joe Thomas's Hall of Fame induction speech, just that's what moves the needle for me in a way that is just special beyond belief. I always go, Confucius said, choose a job you love. You'll never work your day in a life. I turned 55. I ain't worked yet. It's just an awesome, awesome job.
Well, Bret, you and I have, I don't know if we even realized this before the start. We both have the same goal, which is to get Andy subpoenaed. I'm going to work on mine.
Brett's already succeeded.
Yeah,
so,
Brett's already,
I guess
my new hero.
I guess there's been a few things that have might been in that ballpark, but not quite there.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I got to figure out what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to get you.
Oh, I'm sure you will get me dragged into court at some point, Ari. Bret, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on. Happy New Year. God bless. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Thanks, Bret.
That is Bret Bielema. And Ari, I suck as a host. I'm telling you right now, because didn't we say last week we were going to ask everybody their rules for life, and then I forgot to ask Bret Bielema his rules for life?
Yeah, I mean, it's my fault too, because I should have known. And we're gonna it's a new thing. We're gonna get better at it, but I feel like we blew it because there's nobody I think I would rather ask than that man.
Well, he gave us some already. He said, try to do everything the right way, be respectful of everyone, be the best you. Those are good rules. Also, choose a job you love. You never work a day in your life. That's another great rule. And I would add that Dan Skipper story is a teachable rules for life type moment. Like, always stick up for your people, because remember what he said? He was worried about going into Belichick's office and promoting one of his former players because he felt like Belichick was just, oh, that's just one of your guys. And then he realized after he did it, you should always do that. Like, stick up for your people. Because think about that. That must be intimidating. Like, even Bret Bielema, who at that point had won a Big Ten title, well, multiple Big Ten titles at Wisconsin, had been a head coach in the SEC. Like, it's still probably very intimidating to walk into Bill Belichick's office and say, I think we should sign this guy.
I was hoping for, like, don't put Twinkies on your pizza, but I guess those are pretty good, like, wholesome lessons. But when you ask, we're gonna get
wholesome ones, and we're gonna get Joel Klatt saying never get in a fight with a guy with a giant belt buckle.
Yeah,
we're gonna get both.
I think we got wholesome ones organically there. I think we would have gotten a belt buckle one if we asked. So next time he's on, we're going to have to ask him, or I might just text him and be like, hey, bud, what are your rules for life? And then
Well, we'll save it for the show, because he'll be on again between now and the season. The talking season's long, so
yeah,
we'll see Bret again.
Yeah, but we have to just make sure moving forward that we don't forget that, and we will, because that was a lesson that we learned, and I think we got something there. So, yep. Okay, cool.
New rule for life. Ask the rules for life question every interview.
Yeah. Great interview, though. And I wanted to ask you a follow-up question about something that I didn't ask you in person, and I just, like, listening to that back, wanted to ask you. So you got subpoenaed, and an official came to your door and asked you for materials, right?
Right. Now, it's interesting because this was not one of those you have to serve them in person kind of things. That's why I don't think it was that serious, because they had tried to serve me at my old house, which my in-laws live in now. And so I was warned that they were coming. But it wasn't one of those where you see it in the movies where somebody's like, you got served, and they take a picture of you. Like, that wasn't like that. I didn't have to be, like, served in person. I don't think I was that important of a witness in that case, because I used to live next to this guy who was a doctor, and I guess he was getting served in a malpractice case, and the process server actually parked sideways in the guy's driveway to block his car. And I was like, okay, this is serious. So I don't think I was that important to the case. But yes, they wanted to know what we had talked about in the interview for this one particular SI story that I'd written after he had left Arkansas and was working for the Patriots. And like I said in the interview, I covered the Oklahoma Pro Day. This would have been the spring of 2017. So Baker Mayfield, Orlando Brown, and Bret was there for the Patriots. And so we just started talking, and I was just saying, hey, you know, how's it going? You know, how's life after Arkansas? And he just seemed really happy. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write a story about how Bret Bielema's, you know, in the NFL working with Bill Belichick, and he's happy. And we, you know, got to talking because he loves Frank Ragnow. That is honestly like the bulk of the conversation was him telling me how great Frank Ragnow is. So, but it's funny because their questions are like, what did he say? Give us all of the notes. Tell us everything that happened. Any recordings of the conversation? I'm like, no, you can't have any of that. You can have the quotes that are in the story because I already released them publicly. That's what you can have.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So somebody from the government or from
not the government. It's, I mean,
or from
University of Arkansas is legal. Whoever was working on the case for Arkansas. Yeah.
And you were just like, screw you.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to give them that. They're not entitled to that.
Dude. Maybe Bret owes you a beer.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get... I was going to get thrown in jail in Arkansas over not handing over the notes to that. I don't think it was that sensitive.
I got to tell you something, and I don't know if this makes me a bad reporter, but like I record my conversations, okay? Mm-hmm. And then when the story is done, like if somebody like came to me and was like, hey, I saw the story you wrote in 2022, I need your notes. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, like I couldn't even find them if I wanted them. Like, do you have like a cataloged note like file or something? Like,
no, you destroy your notes regularly so that can't happen. So you can say, I already disposed of those. Those are gone.
Person, and I don't take detailed notes. I record and
I also don't take handwritten notes anymore. Like, I can't even read my own handwriting now. So
but I've always like thought about that too. I don't think I've ever told this story on any platform or to anybody, but I was an intern when I was 18 years old, which is how I got into the Ohio State world at the Rivals site in 2008. So it's been almost 20 years. And do you remember the defensive lineman, Jonathan Hankins?
Of course, yeah. Very good player.
So I was 20, still like working at the student newspaper, hadn't graduated yet, and was doing recruiting calls as an intern for the Rivals site from Tucson, Arizona. So I would get phone numbers for recruits. And if you remember, Jonathan Hankins was a 3-star kid. And I called him on the phone. And he told me he committed to Ohio State. And there are like some like message board people out there that probably remember this. But then I posted on the board, Jonathan Hankins has committed to Ohio State. I will write the story. So in between me posting that and it going, this was like before Twitter. This was like when message boards were where you got news. I think he changed his mind or something, or like started telling other reporters that he didn't say that. And like, I was like, I had the recording.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know why he told me that and then changed his mind. And then I've always had this like,
he was a 17-year-old.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I was a 17-year-old. Like, I didn't know what the hell was going on. Yeah. Like, I was an intern. Nobody knew who I was. Like, I was just some guy making recruiting calls, trying to like write 300-word stories about where people were visiting.
Did you get a crash course in different states' phone recording laws that day?
Well, I was in at a rival site. Like, it wasn't like it was like the New York Times or something. So like, it didn't really get.
That's still something you should know. Like, you should know whether you're in a 1-party state or a 2-party state. Like, I live in a 2-party state
now. I'm 36. I don't know what Texas is. I'm assuming that it's a 1-party state because there are less rules here, right? But I don't know that sort of. So like, you're not allowed to do. What does that mean? You have to tell them you're recording them before you start recording them.
In a 2-party state, both parties must consent to being recorded. In a 1-party state, only one party has to consent. So, yeah.
Okay, well, recorded a lot of people in different states without telling them that I was recording them. But also, too, when I tell them I'm calling them for a story, I thought that was just understood. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just a crap journalist, but like I don't have notes. And I've always had this fear of like, well, what if this happens again? And like my boss asks me for my notes and I'm like, I don't have any. Like, am I fired for not having any? Like, I just don't know. Like, this is maybe inside baseball for journalism, but like that.
Yeah. Let me say, like the one party consent state thing. Like, I've always thought if I have a super sensitive call that I need to be in a one party state to record, like I only live an hour from the Georgia border. Like, I could go to the Loves in Valdosta and just sit in the parking lot and call somebody and then drive back into Florida.
I've been in some tense situations before, but I've never had to even think about that. So that's part of
the and here's the thing, like everybody thinks that when you record something, you're gonna like gotcha somebody, and I tell people I'm recording. Most people do. Like, you say, "Hey, I'm recording this," and it's to make sure that I accurately quote you. And I've had people
that's all it's for.
I've had people I interview say, "Hey, I'm going to record you too, just in case you take something out of context, and then I can release the recording and show the proper context." I'm like, absolutely, record me all you want.
So
like,
from now
if you have
a
reporter who's weird about being recorded asking questions, like you probably don't want to answer their questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I do tell people I'm recording them sometimes, but it's not like a thing for me because I'm asking them like questions about football. So like, I never really like put myself into like first 48 mode, but
Vance, has anyone ever abruptly hung up on you after saying that you're recording? No, because I don't start recording until they say, yeah, I'm cool with it. So now I have had lots of people hang up on me, but that's more like, hey, this is Andy Staples from whatever outlet I was working for at the time. I'm working on a story about, and they're like, oh, click. So that's happened plenty of times, but
I didn't tell anybody during the Bishop Sycamore story that we worked on that I was recording them. I don't think.
I wouldn't admit that.
I'm trying to remember.
Don't worry, you weren't in a two-party state, so you don't have to worry about that.
That's a lie.
But I still wouldn't admit that. But yeah, that Bishop Sycamore thing was wild.
I was interviewing them, so like that's like not like it's a surprise. I don't know. Okay, well maybe one day I'll go back to Arizona and get a master's degree in journalism because I've got
and one other thing for people. This is a little bit outdated, but it's always funny when it happens. If you leave a voicemail for a reporter, it's on the record. Like on the record, off the record is a two-party thing. Like both of you have to agree to it. So if you get mad and leave a voicemail for a reporter and you just cuss them out, and don't be surprised if that gets published because it's on the record.
That's never happened to me either. So maybe I'm just soft. I don't know.
It's happened to me a few times, but it was people I knew. So I just called it back and be like, you can just yell at me. It's okay.
Every time I've ever upset somebody in what I've written, it's turned into a cordial conversation that a lot of times turns into like a follow-up interview to clarify.
Almost always. And I've talked about that with people who are starting in the business. Like the person who calls yelling at you, like don't think of that as a bad thing. That's just the start of another conversation. And usually that's what happens is you when they call yelling at you, you guys, like the two people find common ground and you actually probably have a better relationship afterward.
Yeah. In the 7 years covering Urban Meyer, he never got mad at me, but one time he did. And he called very upset. And you want to know what the story was about?
What was it about?
I asked him a question in a news conference about whether or not he thinks that Ohio should have spring football very early in his tenure. And he said yes. High school football, because they don't have spring football in Ohio, which is a pretty big point of contention for the coaches in that state that think that the players in the South are more developed because they have 16 extra practices or whatever. Right. Like the developmental phase is larger in the South where they do. And he said they absolutely did. And I don't think he was aware at the time how big of a deal that is to like coaches in Ohio. And then like I wrote it and I was just like, Urban, I just wrote a story about what you said in response to a question. He goes, okay, we need to talk about this right now. And then like he did a Q&A and then we did another one and both stories did pretty well. But like you would think of all the times like that I've wrote critical things during his tenure. Like the one
right.
time
That wasn't critical at all. That's just, here's what the guy said. But
here's just what he said. And that was,
but he didn't realize when he said it, he'd get the kind of backlash he got.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think he realized that like I didn't do anything wrong. I think that he just wanted to clarify that
I don't think like, either of you did anything wrong in that case. That's probably a situation where neither of you understood what the response was going to be to that. So
yeah, and like I just figured, hey, do you want the players in Ohio to have more practices so you can evaluate them more thoroughly and recruit them? And he was like, yeah, of course. And it was just like, oh God, like, but yeah, okay. That took a weird turn, but hey, off season.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But it's never the off season at PrizePicks. Best daily fantasy game in America. Download the app right now. Use the code STAPLES when you sign up. Play $5, get $50 instantly. College football season is over, but they've still got college basketball, the NBA, the NHL, the NFL. And right now, there is an almost free square featuring the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels, who's playing the NFC Championship game this weekend. If he throws for 1 yard and you have that more than 0.5 passing yard square, then you will win that square. The way PrizePicks works, you play at least 2 squares. The more squares you play, the higher the potential payout. Let's look at Josh Allen as the Bills prepare to play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. 230.5 passing yards. Do you think that'll be more or less? 0.5 rushing and receiving TDs. Josh Allen, always a threat to score on the ground. Do you think he'll do it against this Chiefs defense? That is the question. So use the code STAPLES, play $5, get $50 instantly. Have a little fun. Jaden Daniels, get you halfway there. Who else can help you? Download PrizePicks, play 5, get $50 instantly when you sign up with code STAPLES. Ari's
guaranteed, but not actually guaranteed because we don't guarantee. Like Josh Allen is going to score a rushing touchdown in this game.
There you go. Ari gave you a Emeka Ibuka the other night, and it all worked out.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It wasn't guaranteed, but it was kind of guaranteed. But we don't guarantee anything.
It was pretty close. He did fumble on the play he went more than.
He fumbled on the play that he went more than after picking up 15 extra yards on the way to hitting the more than.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
Like, so he could have fumbled it. I don't care. Just get the yards and then you can juggle it for all I care. I'm just there.
All right. So we released our way too early top 25 this week. FanDuel has released some way too early top 2025 lines for week 0, week 1, and also one rivalry week game, which is just crazy to me thinking about how far off some of these things are and how much we don't know right now. But it also gets me very excited, Ari, because I'm glad we're getting into this. I'm already excited about next season. I didn't, we were fumbling around on where some of these games were. Like, where's the Clemson LSU game? It's at Clemson. Where's the Notre Dame Miami game? It's at Miami. Like, so now we're getting our sea legs here for the 2025 season. But FanDuel has already released lines. Let's go to Dublin for week 0, Ari. I love that the Dublin game. I love when it's a conference game because you got to come in caring. Like it was Notre Dame Navy a couple of years ago. That one didn't feel as interesting as when it was Nebraska Northwestern, which was not an interesting game in the grand scheme of the Big Ten, but was a fascinating game because of the Scott Frost situation at the time. Georgia Tech, Florida State, obviously very interesting because it just blew up our preseason expectations for Florida State.
That Nebraska game, Northwestern game, was like the sicko Super Bowl, wasn't it?
It was unbelievable.
There was like coaching. I mean, everybody was watching it because there was like coaching implications, but like in terms of the football, like you're playing the most Big Ten West type football game in Ireland. Like, and
it was wild. Like I'm sitting in my backyard watching it on the TV on the porch in Florida in August. So it's like 95 degrees and they're in Ireland and it's cold and windy. Everybody's in jackets and Scott Frost is calling a wild onside kick. Like it was incredible. So Iowa State, Kansas State is the Dublin game this year. We last saw Matt Campbell eating a ritually sacrificed Pop-Tart. We last saw Chris Kleiman playing in a bowl game. So now we get Rocco Becht versus Avery Johnson, like right off the bat. Yeah, give me that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Am I supposed to pick this? Is this what are we talking
we don't
about
have to pick it. We don't have to. We can tell. We'll tell the folks what the line is. So if you're listening in podcast form, don't see the graphic. Kansas State is a 2.5-point favorite. We last saw them beating Rutgers in a shootout of a Care Bowl, 44-41. So K-State is a 2.5-point favorite over Iowa State. I don't really know how to handicap this one yet. Iowa State, we kind of need to know what the offense is going to look like because obviously they were a really good passing offense last year, but Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins are two of the better receiver prospects in the NFL draft now. So the question is going to be, what is that going to look like? I think we're fairly confident in Rocco Becht by this point after we saw him lead Iowa State to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that this year we're also going to get caught back up in the Avery Johnson mania, right? Like, I don't know if that's over. I know that he didn't have the Johnny football type year that people were expecting, but I thought he improved during the course of the year and has a pretty high upside still, no?
I think he does too. And I also think, they kind of, it feels like they're kind of figured out Dylan Edwards as the season went on and how to use him correctly. There are definitely some ways to do this. Jace Brown, they can use him. He averaged 17.5 yards a catch, only caught 47 passes, but I'm guessing they use him more next year. And look, K-State's one of those places you can have receivers where everybody knows you're going to throw to him, but Tyler Lockett says he's going to get open anyway. Like sometimes that just happens. Jace Brown might be that guy. So I am pumped about this one because, again, the Big 12 is going to be the same as it was this year, where it's going to be razor thin margins. Some really good quarterbacks coming back. Like let's look at the standing. So obviously Shedeur Sanders is going to be one of the top NFL draft picks, so he's out. But Sam Leavitt's back for Arizona State. Rocco Becht is back for Iowa State. Jake Ratzlaff is back. Retzlaff is back for BYU. Sawyer Robertson is back for Baylor. Mm-hmm. Avery Johnson's back at Kansas State. Like, there's going to be really good quarterback play in that league.
For sure. It's going to be a fun league. And I just got the notification on my email yesterday of like Big 12 Media Day, Dallas, July 7th and 8th. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, it's time. It's time. All right, let's move on to week one because there's some matchups in here that I like. You remember when they announced they were going to happen? Sometimes they were announced like 6 years ago, and then you forgot they were going to happen, and now it's like, oh wait, this is going on. Auburn Baylor is interesting to me because Baylor is one of the hottest teams in the country at the end of the year. So this game's at Baylor. Baylor's a 1.5-point dog. You and I have said Auburn's a team to watch this offseason, that they could be significantly better this season. Baylor was really good at the end of last season.
Yeah, and also, too, like that'll be the first look at the Auburn offense and who they pick at quarterback and what their potential could be, too. I see that they're a slight favorite on the road. I've never seen a game there. I don't know where we're gonna be on August 30th. If that's the same day as the Ohio State Texas game,
it is the same day. I suspect we'll be in Columbus.
Yeah, but that would be a pretty fun game to go to because I still hold deep in my heart some Jackson Arnold stock. So,
well, here's the thing, and this is what I keep telling people when they ask me about the Auburn pick. I'm not basing it around Jackson Arnold. I'm basing it around that there will be a competition between Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels, and Deuce Knight, and the best one of those will win the competition. Yeah, and that the best one of those, whoever that is going to be better than Peyton Thorne was this past year.
Oh, and they've got 2 NFL receivers to throw to.
There's that. Like that's the biggest piece of it. And the line is solid. Like, I'm not ready to go as far as saying good, great, whatever, but Auburn fans will tell you solid for their offensive line. They're good with. Like, they've been wanting solid for a long time, and they've got solid now. So,
you know what's crazy is if like Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams didn't exist, like Cam Coleman would be a bigger star. I think he had like 9 touchdowns this year and 600 yards receiving as a true freshman.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, I don't know if the world has caught up to how good he is yet, but they certainly will next year. And like,
this freshman receiver class was loaded this year, and you don't usually see them make as big of a splash as Smith and Williams did. So I think you're right.
That was a pretty big splash for Coleman, and it's like I think that the reason why people are so appalled to see us have Auburn pretty high up on our rankings is because that Cam Coleman got overshadowed in a world like if this was 2 years ago, he might have been the most exciting returning player in the SEC. If Ryan Williams didn't exist, like he's really, really good, and he's a big-bodied kid, and you know, he's 6'3" or 6'4", 210 pounds. He's thick. He's got great hands. He's fast. Like, he's a great player. And I think that he's going to win them games in the future. So, I mean, I'm going to take Auburn here. I'm going to lay the points. And
don't worry, we can pick this much later. We do not have to pick it now
for 7 or 9 months. Just like let it sit there in the FanDuel account while they invest it on the back end and get 18%. That's what I want.
Yeah, Ari's kicking out interest for FanDuel. Alabama at Florida State. Ryan Williams does exist, by the way, and he's headed to Tallahassee for the first game next year.
God, these are great games. I didn't know that one was even happening until right now.
Bama is an 8.5-point favorite. What if Florida State's just good again? Like I was thinking about that as I saw this line. I'm like, what if last year was just a complete anomaly? Florida State changes coordinators on both sides of the ball, and suddenly they're just good again.
Is there such thing as an anomaly that bad?
I don't think so.
I think they're going to have to rebuild that thing.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, the question is, does that work? Like Tony White, does he come in and make the defense immediately better? We don't know, but they will be challenged right away. And the thing is, we'll also get a look at whatever Alabama's doing at quarterback. Like, we had this discussion yesterday because the message boards have said, oh, Ty Simpson. But again, why wouldn't he have beaten out Jalen Milroe at a certain, because the message boards hated Jalen Milroe. They were like, well, good riddance. I'm like, yeah, but why didn't they change quarterbacks if they thought Ty Simpson was better? Oh, wait, they didn't think he was better. So you got Ty Simpson, you got Austin Mack, who came with DeBoer from Washington. You have Keelan Russell, who's the freshman. And again, in some of these situations, whether it's Keelan Russell or Deuce Knight or some other situation, there is going to be a true freshman quarterback who comes in and they're like, holy crap, that's the guy.
Yeah. No, I'm on high alert for Russell there.
Yeah.
I am.
Oh, Georgia Tech, Colorado. We're high on Georgia Tech. We have in our top 25. So Georgia
Haynes
Tech
King is coming back for his 36th year. So like that, and he was like struggle with health again. But when he's healthy, he's a very efficient and fun quarterback. Well,
also they're a deep quarterback room. Like they went 3 deep this year where they had to play 3 different guys. And so it's not just Haynes King, but I saw Brent Key at the national title game the other night, talked to him for a minute. Like, I'm excited about what he can do there. And I realize they lost Eric Singleton to Auburn. They're going to be one of those programs that when they have a guy who's kind of a potential superstar, they're going to lose him. Like when Jeff Collins was there, they lost Jahmyr Gibbs to Alabama. Like it's going to happen that way. But I think Brent Key's a really good developer, especially on the line of scrimmage. He's a former O-line coach. Like I thought they were very tough on both lines of scrimmage last year. I'm excited about this. Also excited to see Colorado. We're assuming Deion's still the coach. The Cowboys haven't made a hire yet, so We'll see. I've been going down the rabbit hole. I knew it was bad this morning, Ari, and I texted you and producer River about this. I found some guy with 19 followers who had a very long tweet thread laying out a conspiracy theory about how Deion's already been involved in the Cowboys interview process and how some of these alleged head coach interviews are actually coordinator interviews. And I'm like, I'm sure this person's wrong, but I really want to believe all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the people with the 19 followers are always the ones that have the inside info. That's the guy who's going to break it.
But if assuming Deion is back at Colorado, it will be interesting to see how he builds without Shedeur, without Travis Hunter. Is Caden Salter your week one starter? I would assume he is. I don't think they signed Julian Lewis. He's their big recruit at quarterback. But I don't think you bring in a guy with as much experience as Caden Salter unless you're planning on playing him, because I think you would have gone somewhere else if the idea was to start him.
Yep. Yeah. And like the fact that Georgia Tech is out here laying 4.5 already might give us a key into how people are going to view Colorado heading into the offseason. So, losing your Heisman winner and your quarterback is going to be tough, but I think they did a really good job of backloading the quarterback position.
Notre Dame at Miami. This is a hell of a season opener.
It's Catholic's first round picks.
Yeah. Notre Dame's a 2.5 point favorite on the road. This is going to change. This line, because we don't know anything. Like, Miami has been a very active spring portal team the last few years. I assume their roster will change a little more as the offseason goes on. We don't know about Carson Beck's recovery from elbow surgery. We'll find out how that goes as the offseason goes on. We think CJ Carr's the QB for Notre Dame. We don't know about that. We saw Steve Angeli come in the Orange Bowl and play pretty well. Like, Steve Angeli already knows how to play in that stadium. Could it be him? Who knows? But here's what I'll say about both these teams. They're both going to have really good offensive lines. And that makes you feel comfortable with both of them being pretty good next year too.
Yeah, and it's going to be another pivotal game. It's not going to be a meltdown game, but it's going to be a pivotal game for two programs that want to either continue where they're building and take the next step, or continue where they've been. And it's like Miami was such a nice surprise this year to a lot of people. I was pretty high on them coming into the year because I liked the sum of its parts. But if they go, 8-4 next year, that would be pretty disappointing. So, and of course, Notre Dame doesn't want to start off the new year with an L when they're trying to prove that they're going to be a consistent fixture in the playoffs. So, two teams that are still, I think, in the ascension mode. And I'm very curious already to see, what those two teams will look like at that point.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And the Carson Beck situation is fascinating because with Cam Ward last year, now this time last year, we still didn't know if Cam Ward was going to be in college. I think I don't know if we'd gotten to the point where he decided. I think he decided by now. That's right. I'm off because the national title game was later this year. So by now he had decided he was going to Miami, and he's already working with them. They know that they have him. Like, the Carson Beck thing he is coming off elbow surgery. You're unsure what he's going to look like after that. So we'll see. But then again, the Notre Dame QB situation, equally fascinating because it seems like they're going to go with somebody homegrown. They've done the 1 year rental the last 2 years, and now they're going with somebody homegrown. Ari, let's go to the one that I assume will be here, but God only knows what's going to happen between now and August. Texas at Ohio State. This could be our number one versus number two, or not ours. This may be number one versus number two with the AP preseason poll and all that.
I think it's going to be. I don't know what the makeup of Ohio State's going to look like. I'm very curious to see what their team is, top to bottom, 22 spots. But I feel like right now, if I were to place a bet on this game, I probably would feel more comfortable with Texas taking points here.
Well, Ohio State's a 4.5 point favorite, according to FanDuel. We know who the Texas quarterback will be. It's going to be Arch Manning. Ohio State, is it going to be Julian Sayin? That's the thought?
That's the thought. They have other options too. They are another one of in the Alabama camp of 5-star true freshmen who can come in and maybe, make some waves if they need
St.
that.
Clair.
But and I know that Ohio State has Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, but like when you look at what Texas is returning, like if the game was tomorrow, like I would take Texas.
Yeah, it's interesting because Texas, if you look at the on-3 transfer portal rankings, Texas is not ranked as high as it has been because I don't think they feel like they need as much out of the portal this time. I think they feel like they've developed what they have and feel pretty good about what's already there.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's going to be the game of the weekend for sure. And there's a lot of great games here.
Oh yeah. We also have Tennessee, Syracuse, which Syracuse coming off 10 wins. They were trying
River
to,
there. He was a little nervous.
Yeah, Tennessee's a pretty
Syracuse.
big favorite in that game. They're a 13.5-point favorite. The assumption is Kyle McCord is in the NFL at this point. They were, kind of, I guess, Hail Mary hopeful that they might say the 1 year he played 5 games at Ohio State he could get a red shirt for, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I thought it was already over.
I believe it is. He's declared. He said he's gone, but then you had them talking about it about a week ago with maybe not. But yeah, I don't think.
Use some of that NIL money to get a better lawyer. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, the thing is, Fran Brown did a great job reshaping that roster last year. So we'll see what he can do this year. We also have another big one involving 2 teams that are in our top 25. LSU going to Clemson. The battle for Death Valley, because they play at the Clemson Death Valley this year, and they'll play at the LSU Death Valley in 26. 2 really good returning quarterbacks in Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik. Defense under new management at Clemson. Tom Allen is your new defensive coordinator there, but it is not like they lack time. This is not the situation that Blake Baker walked into at LSU this past year, where they didn't have a lot of talent relative to what they usually have, and he had to kind of work with the pieces he had. Clemson, they got dudes, and I would imagine that Tom Allen will deploy those dudes better. Big game.
This is probably on the list of Florida Miami from last year of whoever loses meltdown fan base. There's no winner here. That's the closest I think we have week 1 to meltdown mode central, because there's a lot of expectations for Clemson to get back on track and put itself in a position where it's a little bit. I mean, it made the playoff this past year, but a little bit more like the Clemson that we become accustomed to. And then, of course, if LSU loses another opener, after the year that they've had, especially when Jaden Daniels wins the Super Bowl this year, I think that when Jaden Daniels wins the Super Bowl this year,
you're giving out more picks? I love it.
No, I just first of all, Washington's really fun to watch, but can you imagine how our people are already grinding their teeth about LSU not getting a good enough defense to win?
My son and I were trying to explain to my wife why LSU fans are so mad over Jaden Daniels being so good. And it's not that they're mad at Jaden Daniels. They're just mad because they had and the fact that they had him so soon after Joe Burrow, within 5 years of one another, 2 all-time elite college quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. were wasted because they had the worst defense LSU's ever had in 2023. Wasted.
Yeah. So if they go out and lose another opener, it's going to get uncomfortable there, I think.
Yes.
Now, I also wonder.
I don't believe this is going to be a Sunday game. I think this game's on Saturday. So
how do LSU fans feel about their coach who left Notre Dame and then saw Notre Dame go to the national championship for the first time in 100 years after he left? I don't know. Sport changed, but there's a lot bubbling under the surface there. We'll have to get T-Bob back on.
Oh yeah. And look, Dabo used the transfer portal. Not a lot, which we always said if he starts using it, he's not going to use it a lot, but in some spots. in some spots. So, they got an edge rusher from Purdue. They got a linebacker from Alabama. They got a wide receiver from Southeast Missouri State. So I'm so excited, Ari. Like,
one last one,
I'm
Andy,
already excited for next season.
I saw the spread for the look-ahead game for the Ohio State-Michigan game opened up at 8.5, which I thought was insane. Like,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
It's down to 6.5. I love the line movement 11 months in advance. But I don't know if I'm 100% certain that I'm going to be picking Ohio State to win that game, let alone laying 2 possessions in a situation where Michigan's going to be much better and Ohio State conceivably is going to be much worse than they were a year ago. Although I do have a theory that now that Ryan Day has a national championship and all the pressure's off of his ass, he can just relax during that week and probably, coach better. But I don't know. I feel like Michigan's going to be better next year, and they're going to be at home. And I thought 8.5 in January, when we don't know who Ohio State's quarterback is, seemed like a little extra.
We also don't know who Michigan's quarterback will be at that point.
I know, but I think we feel pretty good about it.
Thinking Mikey Keene. We think, but it might be Bryce Underwood. By that point, think about this. We will have digested Thanksgiving dinner by the time that game gets played.
I want to go to Vegas for Thanksgiving this year, just so you know. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm going to try.
We bring both the families and we just have like a Vegas buffet Thanksgiving dinner.
Have you ever done Thanksgiving in Vegas before?
No.
It's like the best time to be there because it's like kind of dead. Rates are cheap, but it's also like chilly out. So you can, and all the restaurants have like Thanksgiving menus, and it's really good. We went to an Italian restaurant like 8 years ago when I went in the Caesars Forum shops, and it was like one of the best meals I've ever had in my life because we didn't get the Thanksgiving feast. We just ate a true Italian dinner.
What happens if you lock this thing in? Like you lock in Michigan plus 6.5 at home, and Michigan roars into that game 11-0 when Ohio State's like 9-2.
It's good value.
It's a good time. That would be a good time to be in Vegas, just knowing you got that ticket in your pocket.
I think people take these because they're trying to, project what the line might be later on. It's like Michigan's getting 6.5 or 8.5. You lock that in, and then Michigan's -1, and then you take Ohio State +1. You have a pretty good middle there too.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point of these, and also just to lock up your money. But okay, Andy. This isn't going to be elegant, but I just got to tell you, I don't know if you saw the text. I have to go to the bathroom, so you have to wrap this up.
I'm going to make you sit here. We have like 19 more things to talk. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Go.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll let you.
You go, and I'm going to tell everybody a little story, and then I'm going to ask them to send us some questions. So, bye, Ari. Enjoy. I don't know if you're whispering or screaming here, but go have fun.
I'm going to keep my headphones in so I can hear the story, though.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this goes back to when I was working on Sirius XM. So that's radio. It's live radio. And you have commercial breaks. And there was a moment where I was in the midst of discussion. I don't know which co-host I was working with because I was a fill-in guy. So I worked with a bunch of different co-hosts. I'm in the midst of discussion, deep discussion about some sort of college football topic. And my guts start bubbling. And it's like, this is happening now. This is happening now. And it's like, so my co-host finishes a great thought that definitely requires a comeback from me. And I'm like, and we'll get to that when we come back on Sirius XM College Sports Nation. Headphones off. Running. Because I knew the break was only like 2.5 minutes. No explanation given to the co-host or producer. None. And then I made it back. I did not explain to anyone until the next break. Did not explain on the air. But it all worked out. Now, there was the other time when somebody was doing some work in my backyard and they hit a gas line and I was live on the radio and a fire truck pulled up in front of my house with the sirens on. That was also a problem. Mike G says Andy's going to be like Leslie Nielsen in Naked Gun. No, fortunately, the mic stays here, but I do worry about that. I was recording something a week ago where they put the lavalier mic on you and it has the mic pack, so it's remote and it goes with you. I did worry about an Enrico Palazzo moment, but did not do that. And we're here. But yeah, sometimes in the midst of a live show, nature calls. And sometimes you get there was a great clip a few years ago where these two guys were just arguing on a podcast, and you see the one look a little uncomfortable, and you hear him go, and then he just drops headphones and runs. So, he bet on a fart and lost on that one. Oh, we got our story time graphic up now. So that's pretty much it. I think Ari's probably done now, but I'm not going to make him come back because we do have to let JD get on the air here in a few minutes. Stick around on the On3 Sports YouTube channel because JD Piquel will be here with the hard count as he is on Thursday of every week. But also, we haven't done a Dear Andy, Dear Ari show in a while just because of the rhythms of the playoff and everything. We're going to get back to regular schedule with that. But I want to do one tomorrow. Dear Andy and Ari, you know how to find us. At Andy_Staples on X and Instagram. At Ari Wasserman on X and Instagram. AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com if you have a truly epic question that or you just need some privacy to ask your question, like Ari needs some privacy right now. AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. Hit us up with your questions. I think it's an all mailbag day tomorrow. Like we've done a lousy job of answering your questions. So now it's time to do it. So hit us up with your questions, and tomorrow we will be back 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll answer them all. We'll talk to you then.